We have with us Mauritz Botha from XiO Water, and good morning. And
Good morning.
we welcome you to talk about a lot of the control technology and reporting technology that you are bringing to bear on a number of systems. We have been having discussions with a number of companies, and it seems like it almost boils down to using technology for information gathering and decision making and management. So, I mean, just as a broad umbrella, and let's get into details with XiO Water.
Would love to, and I think that's the important distinction. There is there's a lot of data collection, and the cloud and artificial intelligence is the flavor of the day, right? But there's a lot more to it, and I think I see a lot of new normals, especially what concerns water, energy, greenhouse gases, and the whole environment that we live in. And then the wild card, the wild west, and that is what we saw in the attack on the pipeline just this very weekend. So we sit in an environment where there are a lot of new normals. So how do you manage that? That's the question.
That's true. Yeah. So the kind of a security overlay, very much in the news in that regard. So Mauritz, why don't you introduce yourself and then also describe XiO?
Thanks, Dan. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of a company called XiO. We specialize in what's now called the Industrial Internet of Things. We've been in business for about 10 years, and we apply our technology on water in general, wastewater plants and control of wastewater plants, lift stations, and then just water generation in general. We've got a very strong presence in Sonoma County, on the peninsula, as well as in Ventura County, and then around 500 installations across the state. What makes us unique, though, is it is an industrial control system, but we've moved it to the cloud. And moving it to the cloud, initially people were really skeptical because of the security implications. But I think with proper design, you can mitigate those. So the environment that we work in is we provide monitoring and control to the water industry, but we bring in 21st century analytics into this whole picture.
Well, great. Now you mentioned in terms of wastewater, and I was trying to get into market focus. What kind of situations are you looking to use your cloud technology?
So there is one thing about control systems, and when it works, it disappears from sight. So think about sewage lift stations. There are a couple of hundred in the peninsula, but you don't see them. It's infrastructure that's pretty much underground. When you see them, you don't want to see them because it means there's a spill. And the spill has severe consequences, especially for us in the Bay Area. The town where we live just fairly recently had a $50,000 EPA fine because of a lift station spill. So what we provide is not only the control for that, but is also to say, in this new world that we live in, how can we mitigate the risks associated with controlling these devices? And so we live in a new world, right? In two years in a row, we had the electricity shut off for a couple of days where we lived as a preventative measure for these wildfires. So all of a sudden, the people managing these lift stations add another curveball because you cannot wait. if the water flows, you have to get it out of that lift station, otherwise you have a problem. So I think that the whole focus is to say, in this whole world of monitoring and control, what can we do to make it visible to people, so that they can fulfill their primary duty? And secondly, what can we do to optimize everything that they're doing so that it will cost them less? They can replace the knowledge base, because what we often see is people lose the skill set of people retiring, and it's very difficult to replace them. But the cloud and the analytical engines, those are the perfect vehicles for us to collect that information and to apply that in a meaningful way.
Yes, we've in a past Water Palooza, we did have a session on the silver tsunami, and
Yeah.
so it was workforce training, and it's interesting that the workforce training was both to for incoming people, just out of, actually even out of high school or out of some community college, and the opportunities there for an equitable, build a bench essentially for the water industry. But also there was the issue of advanced training as well, because there's a lot, even if people had a lot of experience in say wastewater treatment, things are changing in that area as well. So the knowledge base is changing. So it's that's an interesting kind of addition, I suppose, that you can bring to kind of systematize that a bit more, as well.
And I think some of the things that are driving these things, so when we look at, say, a problem definition, is to say, I remember fairly recently when I bought a new car, they wanted to sell me a GPS. And my conversation with the salesperson was rather interesting, is to say, I'm driving off your lot with something that's already dated. It's already old. So why would I do that? Why wouldn't I use my smartphone and use Google Maps or Waze that will give me updated information that is real time, that says, don't take this road, there's been a crash. Take this off ramp. So there's a whole new force driving our expectations, but the industrial control system world didn't keep up with that. And but the reason why they didn't keep up, I believe, is security, because the time when most of these industrial control architectures were designed were in the late 70s, where there was no concept of cybersecurity, and they haven't changed since. The fundamental core architectures haven't changed. So that is one of the things that we try to address in our system, is how do you provide a superior service that is akin to, say, a Google Maps or Waze, in a way that does not compromise the security of a critical infrastructure system.
So I guess to be precise, you are, for the most part, I mean, dealing with supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA systems, but then having that as, I mean, that is supposed to be was always a universal remote access means, but
Yeah.
but as you say, putting it on the cloud and having the equivalent of Google Maps and Waze, or like the newest, just newer technology and newer reporting to it be very useful. So your that car analogy is actually pretty good in that there's been this existing concept for quite a while. I mean, I'm not sure how old that architecture is, but I mean, it's probably what, 30, 40 years old, but it for machines, but giving it new life just in terms of using the data acquisition.
Yeah, and if I may, I would like to show you just some use cases that we've applied
Sure.
this technology just to make it tangible. So if I may share my screen,
Please do.
here, here is the context, right? Water and energy go hand in hand. You need energy to produce water. You need it to heat the water and all kinds of things and uses. And the Public Policy Institute of California, I got this graph from them just to give you some overview of how much energy is used in the water sector in California. That's a huge number. It's a tremendous amount of energy, and here are the uses of that. Now, the interesting thing is that that first number is that the PPI see estimates that 10% of the state greenhouse gases are associated with water. It uses 20% of the electricity and 30% of the natural gas for treating and heating and everything that's associated with that. So if you can do anything to change that number, it may have a huge impact. So here's an example of how we applied that. We've got this one customer, big agricultural customer. They've got about 11 pumps, and the electrical bill, just when they run these pumps, it costs them about $500 an hour, just to put that in perspective. But what happens is most of their water, obviously all of their water is groundwater, and as the season changes, the aquifer levels drop. In the winter, it recharges, it goes up, pumping starts, it goes down over the season. And the pumps are designed for a specific head, the height that they have to pump the water, where they're most efficient. So as the season changes, that efficiency also changes. So what we do with these folks is on a regular basis, we measure the energy intensity of these pumps, and you can see we have first the trigger level there, and then an efficiency order, and finally people may have some need to service their pumps, so they take one of the pumps out of service. But what it boils down to, what I showed there, is we saved, last year we've got an audited number of saving them almost $60,000 worth of energy. That is the savings for them. What we save as a collective society is we add less greenhouse gases, because we use the substantial amount of energy less than what we would have used previously. So here's just an overview of a screenshot of what our system looks like. So we've got all these 11 pumps. For each pump on a daily basis, we calculate the energy intensity, and that is just how much energy do you need to pump 1,000 gallons of water. And then we allow people to apply those new rankings, and the rest is reflected in the savings. So very simple use case of how you can use smart technology, and that's the limitation of the old systems, because the old systems, the focus was just on making the thing work, and it was very hard for people to add these efficiencies on an ongoing basis, let me put it that way. And that's the benefit of the cloud, because we collect all this data, we analyze the data, and we say, we can do it better. And when we do that, just as is the case with Google Maps, all our customers automatically inherit that functionality.
That's great. You mentioned, I guess you have about 500 installations. I know, I don't remember if you said within California or overall, but.
Yeah, it's overall. Most of our installations are in California, but we pretty much all over the states, and we've got one in Africa and a couple in Canada as well.
And how? I mean, we've mentioned wastewater systems, and you mentioned some agricultural applications. How else would you categorize your customer base?
That is pretty much it. So water production.
Those are big chunks.
It is, and it's a very interesting market, because I mean, many people need water, right? It's a very accessible market for us because most of the control innovation happened to support the larger systems. But in California alone, there are more than 7,000 water systems, and 5% of them are big, like San Francisco or East Bay Mud. The rest are small. And I mean, our smallest customer is a water system, a mutual water system supplying water to 8 hookups. So it's a wide range. But again, this democratization of the cloud makes it much easier to amortize development costs to enable us to serve underserved and disadvantaged communities. Because often those are the people that could benefit the most from automation and savings and inefficiencies, but they cannot afford the automation. But having a cloud service where that development cost is amortized over many people, it just makes it so much easier for these people to have access to proper technology.
No, that's certainly a good point. I mean, we've been doing a lot of, I've been working with a grad student who's been involved in GIS and mapping. And
Yeah.
so we've been on different projects as recently as this morning, just mapping out even the water systems, the retail water systems in the Bay Area, which do run the gamut from SFPUC and Valley Water
Yep.
to these very small systems. And actually, when you hear about the right to water and the problems with some systems not being able to provide even clean drinking water, it is a lot of times the disadvantaged small water systems. And so hopefully some of what you do can be brought to bear and just in those, with those systems. I mean, it is astounding how many water systems there are, and just within a relatively small slice, I'll say from maybe Salinas to Marin County, I think, and we included the East Bay, there were 98 different water retailers, because
Wow.
we were looking, our most recent project was we were looking at, what conservation programs are available to consumers from their retail water systems or their wholesaler in combination. And we hit 98 pretty quickly. And that's a lot.
It is. There's one other focus that I just want to touch on very briefly, and that is the whole concept of waste. Because what we see a lot is people say the amount of billable water that you produce. So for every 100 gallons you produce, how much can you actually charge for? And it's astounding how much water just disappears because of leaks and all kinds of things. So just to give you another example of some of the benefits that we see with the cloud, here is a screenshot of the what we call the historian. So it's just the tank level over a period in August 2 years ago. And a human eye is a phenomenal thing, because right there where the arrow is, you can see something change there. So our challenge was to say, we know there was a leak there, but how do we tell the machine to pick that up and do that automatically? And one of the analytical solutions that we came up with is we've got this concept that we call a virtual water meter, and you can see the daily cycles. And some days, like on the weekends, this is a resort just up north. So on the weekends, they use a little bit more water, but all of a sudden there was a big spike here. And within 15 minutes, we were able to notify them that there was an issue. But what makes this problem a little bit more difficult is you can see year over a calendar year span. In the summer, they use a lot more water. In the winter, they don't use as much water. So something that is normal use in the winter or in the summer would be a leak in the winter. So creating algorithms that allow people to detect this quickly and easily. Long story short, what it ended up is within 15 minutes, the analytical engine could warn them that there was a leak. It took them 2 weeks to find the leak. It turns out to be 8 feet underground in an old riverbed. Compare that to the old days where they would have received an electrical bill 30 days later that says, oh man, you used a lot of electricity. So a couple of things happened. They spilled a lot of chlorinated water in the ground, and they would have spilled so much more, and it would have cost them a fortune that they didn't have in the first place. So by just really being smart about these things and using the power of analytical engines, we can do so much more than what people were able to do in the past.
That's a good illustration. And I know just even as a homeowner, I've had that issue just with like an irrigation system that suddenly, one of the controllers just broke, and I had this leak going on, and luckily my local, I got a call from my local utility and saying you probably have a leak. Check that
Yeah.
out. And sure enough, the water meter was spinning when I started looking at it, and but was within a day was able to isolate it and fix it before things got out of hand. And you mentioned, obviously that's be a big cost to me, but then also there's a greater, public cost of that waste of water as well. So
Indeed.
there's a couple bottom lines involved.
And since we're talking about sustainability, is now this completes the picture in my mind, because all of a sudden you in this leak detection example, you prevented a lot more greenhouse gases because you need the energy to pump the water. But if we flip this whole thing around, is about 2 years ago was the first time in California history where the spot price for electricity went negative. In other words, because of the oversupply of solar, we had to pay Nevada to use our electricity. And I mean, that must be the ultimate sin, right? Because wouldn't it be fantastic if the Public Utility Commission or the independent system operator could send us a message and say, hey, we've got an oversupply of electricity, run all the pumps that you can right now. We're not going to charge you for the energy. Because all of us win in that scenario. But because of all these rigid systems, it's very, very difficult to do that. We've got some time of use, energy incentives, but tying that whole thing together is my dream. If we can get to a point where I can get a signal that says, run all the pumps that you can right now, because we will optimize our energy, wouldn't that be fantastic?
That's the flip side of demand management. It's usually the other way around, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I could definitely see that. Hopefully we'll get better at storing those electrons, and but still,
this is storing it, right? We store it as potential energy.
True. Yeah.
So so some countries have these big storage schemes that they use. South Africa is a very water scarce environment, so they've got some big storage schemes where in the evenings they pump water up a hill, up to the in the mountain, say a couple 100 feet, and in the daytime during the peak they run it down and run the generators. That way you fill the valleys and clip the peaks. But we've got a very similar issue here with the sustainable energy that we provide, because everybody with the solar roofs and everything, we are going to get more and more of these situations where we have days of oversupply, and it is difficult to store it. One way to store it is as water pumped potential energy, because you have to do it anyway.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's not that it has to be done at some point as well. So yeah, now's the time.
Yeah.
So for people listening to your talk, I just wondered about takeaways. If you had a couple, three kind of takeaways about what you're doing and XiO is doing. And then I have a second question, which is what I like to call the Felicia Marcus magic wand question. And if you were made king, you were king of California, what would you do in the water world, or the extended world? I mean, you got into energy as well, to improve everyone's life. So 2 questions.
Can I start with the last one first? If
Sure.
I made king with the water thing, there are 2 things that I would like to address, and this is having a whole holistic approach to water. So all these grandfathered in water access rights, and I think the misuse of water, because I mean, come to think of it, a lot of the areas in California has the same rainfall as in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and you drive through there, you would never say that because the lawns are green and pools. You know, there's quite a difference in our use and perceived use of water and what the issue is compared to, say, a place like Israel that has a similar environment than some parts of California. The second part for me is I took my hand earlier, is bringing this energy and water nexus to a crest, is to say, let's use that, let's use it really smartly, because that way we can all benefit from this environment. The first question you asked, takeaways, is, I mean, security is the one thing that I'm subscribing to, especially if we talk about industrial control systems, is this concept of consequence-driven cyber-informed engineering that was coined by the Idaho National Labs. And that is basically saying that it's not a matter of if, it is when you are compromised, regardless of whether your system is connected to the internet or not. What do you do? So what that translates to me is, for users of industrial control systems, practice a day without SCADA.
A day without data.
Yeah, SCADA and data. Yeah. So think about the pipeline. They had a hard lesson, so they never practiced that. So all of a sudden they have to work without SCADA, and they couldn't. The second thing is take security seriously. Ask the vendors and really vet them. And for each individual, change your passwords now. That's pretty much my takeaways that I'd like to share.
Well, great. Well, Mauritz Botha, thank you for telling us about XiO and actually security. I mean, there basically isn't anything not connected these days to the internet in some ways. We're even finding a lot of voting machines that are not supposed to be connected. They have cell phones in them. It is something that really needs to be top of mind as far as kind of security, as well as the functionality. I mean, there's a lot of benefits of, obviously, the functionality we get from connectivity.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, but like so many things, there's good and bad.
It is.
But mostly good.
Yeah. Well, it was great talking to you, Dennis.
Yes.
Nice meeting you. Love what your organization does, and we'll keep on following them.
Well, great. Thank you.